Good morning. I'm Richard Calhoun, a real estate broker here in Silicon Valley for 40 years, here to present data. Been collecting data since March of 97. These are URLs that you'll need to know to get to different places. Here's the first data points. This is showing days of unsold inventory. Days of unsold inventory is how long would it take to sell the existing inventory at the existing rate of sales. The blue line is the current data, so we're down here. The yellow line is the 5-year median. So when the blue line is below the 5-year median, that means there's less days of unsold inventory. Days of unsold inventory is how long it would take to sell. So right now we're down somewhere around 17 days to sell everything on the marketplace. That's an extremely fast marketplace. So this is one of the times that low on the graph is a good, very quick marketplace. Normally it's high and to the right. Here it's down low. So the purple line is the dividing line between 2021 and 2020, because we don't have data for the end of the year from 2021, obviously, yet. You can see that last year with the pandemic, we had a huge slowdown. There was a lot of days of unsold inventory. Then fairly rapidly, once we could start showing properties, it came down and sort of followed the norm. Then right towards the end of last year, basically week 48, you started having less days of unsold inventory at a time when it normally really increases. And part of the reason for this is holidays negatively impact real estate. And with COVID, even though the holidays were a fair amount of travel, it was less than normal. So the spike up, the slowdown in days of unsold inventory wasn't as normal as it would be expected. Then again, we resumed the normal period here. And right around week number 7, we started changing and we started improving by going lower, the faster marketplace. And I'm not even sure it's improving, but a more rapid marketplace. So you have to act more rapidly than you would like to. This is showing the breakdown in the different geographical areas and the different type of properties. First off, you have single family homes, you have San Mateo County, and you have Santa Clara County. The important one is at the bottom, days of unsold inventory. And here is the 17 days I was talking about, and that's based on 5 weeks. The 15.3 days, which is super fast. I think it's the fastest I've seen, except if you start talking into micro markets. Micro markets, Cupertino, Sunnyvale has been down at 7, 8. I think I even saw it at 5, which is unbelievable because that means you'd sell everything on the market before a week went. And the only reason it was that number was sellers and agents were holding properties off the market before they would accept offers. But getting back up to what we have currently, you have the total number of active listings last week and this week. So you can see in the single family range, it's down slightly. In the condo market, you basically can't call that, it's got to be called flat. I mean, yes, it's up 2 in San Mateo County, and yes, it's down 1 in Santa Clara County. But when you're talking about the amount of fluctuation we have in the real estate market, even though it may not seem like it, when you start looking at it granularly, there is a lot of fluctuation. So that's flat. So you basically have had no real change in inventory from last week to this week. You can see the total count was 1844 last week to 1817 this week. Number of offers. Now, this is not this week versus last week. This is 1 week versus 5 weeks. So you can see in 1 week, we sold 126 homes, single family homes in San Mateo County. And in 5 weeks, we sold 608. So that's how you go through the table. You can see the different micro markets and types of properties on how they're performing. The absolute fastest, obviously, is Santa Clara County single family homes. San Mateo is pretty close at 23. Condos, I hate to use the word lagging, but they are slower at 27 and 31 days. You can see in both cases, Santa Clara County has a larger number of properties, so the number is closer to the Santa Clara County. It's not a strict average of the two numbers. Here in San Mateo County, you're at 23. A straight average of that would be 20, and 18.8 days is closer to 17 than 23. So, and that's because of the number of sides. If you take one set of data that has 2/3 of your data, it's a weighted average. It's going to be closer to that side than a strict average. Here's the days of unsold inventory of the 3 key markets that are the key markets because they're the biggest, and that's single family homes in Santa Clara County, single family homes in San Mateo County, and condos and townhouses in Santa Clara County. You can see the red line is single family homes in Santa Clara County. It is the absolute fastest. Historically, the fastest marketplace is San Mateo County single family homes, which is currently right now coming in 3rd place. marketplace. So explain that. The best explanation is with COVID, people are trying to get a little bit bigger house. They're traveling a little bit further away from the workplace. San Mateo County is more in the center of the job center than Santa Clara County is. So people are fleeing San Mateo County a little bit, flocking to the East Bay, flocking to the Central Valley, but also flocking to, believe it or not, high-priced Santa Clara County. Here's the days of unsold inventory broken down by the different micro market areas. And to give you an idea of how on fire the market is, I consider 40 to 80 days to be a balanced market. And so from 50 to 70, I have no color. So I have a little bit of shade for 10 homes on the hot side and 10 days on the high side. But I never expected to get below 24 and a half days of unsold inventory. I never expect to get above 110. But yet we're sitting here in some of the faster areas, and now they're not Cupertino and Sunnyvale. They're the more affordable areas, Milpitas, Santa Teresa, Blossom Valley, sort of the cookie cutter suburban homes. Right now, you would sell everything on the marketplace in under 12 days. That's under 2 weeks. If you go down to San Mateo County, they're fairly quick, except for Menlo Park, Atherton, the expensive communities, which does tend to pull up the entire county when you look at the county as a whole. So to some degree, if you look at these 12, 16 days, that is actually faster than most of the areas in Santa Clara County. But because of this 52, when you look at the county overall, it's a higher number. And that's why it's important to, some people accuse me of having too much data, but at least you can understand why your numbers are doing what they are by having this much data. Yeah, maybe it is too much data, but I'd rather understand than speculate. Now we're looking at the total number of inventory available. How many listings are available for a buyer to walk in and buy today without bumping out another buyer? Right now, you can see the blue line, which is still this year's data, is right on top of the gold line. So we have exactly the inventory we'd expect. So in both counties with both type of properties, we have normal inventory. So everybody that's screaming, we have no inventory, we have no inventory. You need to qualify that a little bit. When we get into the nuances, you'll see we have no inventory in single family homes in Santa Clara County, but that is not no inventory for the entire real estate marketplace. What we really have, and we'll see that fairly shortly, is more demand. And when you have more demand, normal inventory feels like there's not the right number of inventory, but it's the surplus of demand that's causing the problem. This is the number of new listings that are coming on the market each week. You can see that initially with COVID, there was a huge resistance to come on the market. When we could start showing vacant properties, there was some resistance, but fairly quickly, before July 1st, sometime in the month of June, all of a sudden the listings were coming on the marketplace with the blue line exactly at the rate of normal. And then by summer, people were by summer, I'm talking about the week 31, it's probably close to Labor Day, people were starting to get comfortable with COVID restrictions, and we were actually getting more inventory than normal coming on the marketplace. One, it was initially meeting the shortfall here, but we rapidly made up that shortfall and some more. And the reason you're having more sellers, in my opinion, is because for a large percentage of the population, their housing needs change significantly with shelter in place. Maybe they have children at home. Maybe they have two professional business people working at the same home, maybe 3 or 4 with shared housing, and they needed more space. So all of a sudden, what was acceptable became unacceptable. They tried to tolerate it for a while. They realized this wasn't going to work, and then they made the decision to get on the market and move. Here's the number of offers, and this is where you can see the demand. Notice that the demand got up to normal earlier than the number of listings that came up to normal. Then more rapidly, because we were talking about week like 33, I think it was close to, before the inventory started going up, the number of new listings was above normal, but the number of offers was above normal starting at week 25, and it stayed above, and it was getting more and more above the whole time. It came over and is way above through here, and it's this huge difference between the blue line up here and the yellow 5-year median that's causing the perceived shortage of inventory. And again, as I've tried to stress, it's too many offers, it's too many buyers, it's too much demand. But in a capitalist society, it's supply and demand, and if you don't have enough supply or you have too much demand, you have a problem. Now, obviously, if you had more supply, it would take care of your demand, but this is a demand-driven issue at the moment, in my opinion. I know some people will want to argue with me, and that's what makes the world go round. Now, what we're doing is we're just looking at those 3 things that we looked at: available inventory, new listings, and new offers, all on compared to what the normal is. So if the line was 100% normal, it'd be right on the gold line. And if you can see the blue line right here, basically starting about week 9, And the blue line, which is inventory, has basically been falling right along the yellow line. Yes, there's a little perturbation up here, but that's only 1 week. But for the most part, it's been right on it. So inventory is exactly what you'd expect it to be. New inventory coming on the market is the gray line, and it's been above normal. It had a huge drop 2 weeks ago, and I think that corresponds with Easter. And you might say, well, wait a minute, if that's normal, wouldn't there be a drop in the yellow line, and therefore the yellow line adjust and it'd be smooth? Easter moves from week to week. So Easter is in different locations, different years. The 5-year medians, and it sort of averaged that out. And that's why you have this big spike down for Easter. You wouldn't expect a percentage spike. You'd expect less new listings, but not a percentage less new listings when you got to a holiday, because you'd expect the impact to be the same. With COVID, that impact isn't really the same because people are traveling less, and therefore the negative impact of holidays is less on the real estate market. Then finally, the third component up here is the number of new offers. And you can see that that's been, with some perturbations, running somewhere around 40% above normal. It's somewhere around 135, 140%. Back here at New Year's, you were at 165%. Then you got down to 140, dipped down to like 137 or some number around there, back up to 140. Took a huge dip for a couple weeks down to 120, but rapidly came back up to like 138, 140, 130, I think it was. Now we're about 142. Sort of average that out. You're not at 140, but you're getting darn close to it, probably 138, 139. Here's the number of new closings. Not a lot to learn from the number of new closings. It's simply the number of new offers delayed. The stronger the marketplace is, the fewer TFTs there are. You can see the huge impact here from COVID, and it took longer to recover because it takes roughly 30 days to close the typical transaction. So there's roughly a 30-day lag. So this data is delayed by the 30 days I was talking about, and that's because we need sale price. We don't report sale price in the industry any longer until close of escrow. So the left side of the vertical purple line is 2021. The right side of the purple line is 2020. The red indicates a red hot market. I consider anything from 50% of sellers getting more than their asking price up to be a red hot seller's market. Anything below 33% to be ice cold. Between 33 and 50% to be a normal marketplace. So you can see, except for a little bit after shelter in place, we've been in a seller's marketplace. Silicon Valley has been basically in a seller's marketplace, and I have to go back and check my calendar, but I think it's probably been about November of 97 onward. It's been in a seller's marketplace with a few perturbations, obviously a fairly significant perturbation around the recession of 2007, but we got back into a seller's marketplace more rapidly than most people give it credit for. Prices were down, prices were below the peak, and that's what a lot of people were saying, we're having a depressed marketplaces, prices were lower than the previous peak, but just because the prices are lower doesn't mean you don't have a fast market with everything selling and things appreciating. And that's part of the equation when you start looking at the data. What exactly are you going to define? As a buyer, a great marketplace is when the market's slow. As a seller, the great marketplace is when you have multiple offers. So it's all depends on your point of view. This is the three marketplaces. I do know what caused this data, so I can now go back and try to clean it up. I am a little surprised on this apparent dip down here. It's right around the holiday season. And when I say right around the holiday season, it's basically the end of January. You subtract off the 30 days, that puts you back around Christmas. You're using 35 days, but I wouldn't expect it. If you go back, the previous years, there's really no huge drop down, but it dropped down and it came back up. Could be just part of the fluctuation. And the drop down is not this peak down here, because this is a bad point. I'm talking about going from that data point right there where my laser pointer is to that point right there. Both data points, I believe, are accurate. And at the same time, San Mateo County went from here to here, which is up, and the condos and townhouses went from here to here, which is up. So it's a fairly significant drop down, and it came right back up. If I somehow could find my data was wrong and it floated around up here and caught up like that, but that means all these data points, which are collected independently, are incorrect. At the same time, they're correct for the other areas. So I believe there was actually a dip. I don't think people really perceived it when you're going from some number around 66 57% of sellers getting overbid to down around 62%, is anyone going to perceive that? It's a 10% decrease, but when you're trying to buy and sell houses, that 10% from 67 down to 62 isn't really noticeable in the marketplace, and is to a large degree irrelevant. Here is the overbid showing up geographically, and you can see the percentages in the different dollar amount. This zip code is showing up for some reason, but it's tied with Menlo Park Atherton. So I don't think there's a data issue, but I will try to clean that up for clarity issues. You can see the Palo Alto expensive areas here. They're basically at 49%. So that's why it's a very faint shade of pink. You can see here anything from at 42 is no color. Below 42 going towards 20, it gets bluer. From 42 up to 75, it's getting redder. On this one, I decided not to have any range where there was no color, like I do for days of unsold inventory. I just feel that the percentage of overbidding is a fairly narrow window and everything is incremental. So I was going to shade it with the color the whole way. So the redder the color, the hotter the marketplace is. But anytime you get to 75%, you're solid red. And if you look at these, most of these numbers are at 75% or at least close to it. East San Jose at 74.6%. You're not going to see the color difference between that and 75%, even though there is a very small color change difference. Milpitas, North Valley, 94.2% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. That's insanity. This is probably I have seen 95% before, but not I think that was in Cupertino, Sunnyvale. The Milpitas, North Valley, Berryessa, Santa Teresa area is a larger, more diverse geographical area. So to get 94.2% there, I think is rarer than getting 95% in Cupertino and Sunnyvale. And you can see Cupertino, Sunnyvale is not far behind right now at 92.5%. But this just gives you an insanity check that how insane the marketplace really is. Here it is graphically, and this is the magnitude of overbidding. This is how much people are willing to pay over their asking price. We have been as high as 112%, now at 108. It's same ballpark, but it is not at what we've had before, even though the frequency is at what we had before. You can see after COVID, people got very conservative, and that is exactly what tends to happen emotionally with hits in the real estate marketplace. And basically, we were held back, and now we're coming up. I think after a year, people are used to shelter in place. They're used to the market remaining strong, and they're getting a little bit less fiscally tight with their offer prices. And this number, if the market continues going forward, will probably start approaching 110 and 112%. It's not there yet. It's clearly looks like it's already plateauing off, but once the emotions of shelter in place, the negative emotions go away, I do expect that to get back up closer to 112. Here is the different geographical areas. You can see there's not a single area that's getting below asking price. The lowest one, probably Menlo Park Atherton at 101.5%. The coast is pretty close behind. This San Mateo County at 200%. That's not my data processing error. That is me not catching an error on the MLS. And I saw it in one place and corrected it. And that's why I know exactly where it's coming from. Someone, when they reported their sale price, put in 3 extra zeros. So their one listing is showing up as selling for 1,000 times the asking price. And with the small inventory, that brings us up to 200. So I will correct the data. It's not a processing error, but it's not catching every raw data mistake coming in. Basically, if someone enters a listing at $1 million and then reports the sale at $10 million, that would be a factor of 10. This was, and I didn't look at which way it was, but it was probably someone listing at a property at $1,000 and then turning around and selling it at $1 million. So the sale price was was a factor of 1,000 higher than the original list price. And that brings up the whole area. So those are some of the types of data checks that I do every single day, and every once in a while one sneaks by me. This is looking at the last 20 weeks of data. It's the sale price distribution for each week. The red is the current week. And you can see down here towards the bottom, it's basically the furthest line to the right. It does not hold true as we come up. And, like last 2 weeks ago is the gray line, last week was the orange line. They were a little bit more aggressive at the higher end. The red line is a little bit more aggressive in the low end. Basically, it gives you some idea there's some fluctuation in the data every single day or every week, and even how the line is drawn. But the takeaway is when you see the oldest 4 lines are dotted lines. So the dotted lines are here, then the dashed lines are the next oldest lines, and then the solid lines. Basically, when you walk through the colors and the fragmentation of the lines, you're seeing that the market's generally increasing. This is your best month we've ever had, which is just April of 2018. We're not still there, but we're closer there than I would have thought we would be. And this is the worst month we've ever had. So we're a long way away from that. And that was December of 2001. Here's the same data, just not as much of it. So again, the dotted lines are the oldest, and they're the 4 worst performing lines. Then the dashed lines are next. And, the gold line may be right in with the top of the dashed lines, but basically you could argue that the 4 dashed lines are the next 4 weeks as far as performance. And then the best performing weeks are the last 4 weeks. It's noteworthy that the worst group out of the last 4 is the gold line, which is March 27th, which is the oldest. So the last 3 weeks of closings have been the strongest performing that we've had. This is actually single family, and it's comparing March data. So this is last week's slide. It has not been updated for this week. I will make my effort to make it updated for next week. This is sale price for the different micro market areas. There's 3 different sale prices here. The middle is the median, which is what most people follow, and that's how I'm assigning the color code. But the low end is the 10 percentile price, and the right-hand number is the 90 percentile. So for example, in South County, you know that 80% of the homes are between $820,000 and $1.8 million. So there's about $1 million range. Los Altos, Palo Alto, staying in Santa Clara County, you can see that the lowest priced home is $2.7 million. And it's not the most expensive. And the 90 percentile is $5.5 million. So you got a range of 2.8 million. So the range is roughly equal to the low amount. The range up here is roughly equal to the low amount. And I'd be curious to see. I may even do that and for my own curiosity and see if that's sort of a good rule of thumb that you take and over here in San Mateo County on the north part, it isn't quite, and this is condo, so it may make a difference. I'll play around with that. That's sort of curiosity, just see how the range is. This is appreciation. I have 2 different sets of data here. This is last week's data on the right. This is this week's data on the left. The median price I'm comparing it to is the same because it's the median price for the entire calendar year of 2020. So this number here is pretty rigid and isn't fluctuating. These numbers are going to fluctuate each week, but it's also a 5-week moving median. So you would think it would be pretty stable. But just look at the difference, which is why I put the 2 tables. This week, South County is showing a 20.5% increase over last year. Last week, it was at 21.5%. You'd almost tend to think that's a decline. But then if you go to East San Jose, you went from 13.5% last week to 16.8% this week. The reason I'm showing the comparison when you go through that, just the fluctuations all over the place. Cupertino was only at 7% last week, and it's 10.8%. But if you sort of just look at it globally, you can see Santa Clara County is somewhere around 15% higher than it was last year. San Mateo County is probably somewhere around 12, 13%. And again, this is just overall, any particular neighborhood, any particular property is going to be unique to that property, which is why I got away from just tracking median price for an entire county or an entire region, as so many people do. It's not what's reflective of what's really happening in the marketplace. And here is just a recap of monthly data. It's just to give you an idea of where we are in 2021 compared to past years. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Open for any questions from anybody that's here.
Richard?
Yeah, Lily.
Hi. I think I have a question on the page before this one, just right before the previous one.
This one or one before that?
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think the title, 5 weeks data starting the first into following month. So the first means the first day of the month?
Yes. So basically, if you look right here, I labeled this data March. So this data started on March the 1st and goes for 35 days to get rid of the weekly cycle. So there's 31 days in March. So I go into 4 days in April, which is why this says the 5th, because I collect it very early on the morning of the data. I collect very early on the morning on the 5th to lock down the data on as of the 4th.
Okay, so it's the 35 days.
It's 35 days. I call it monthly data because if you,
Okay.
being in real estate, you know that escrows, a lot of people like to close at the end of the year. Escrow companies tend to get busy. You sometimes slip an escrow from the 31st to the 1st. It's also difficult to get lenders to do loan documents on the 1st and let you close on the 1st. They typically want the loan documents closed on the first day, the same day of the month. So to some degree, the closings that typically happen early in a month are for activity that occurred in the previous month anyway. But the overriding thing that drove me is when you look at the data, there's a huge monthly cycle. Look at a calendar. Some months there's only 22 days, business days to record documents. Other months there could be 24 days. That's a 10% increase in the number of days to record documents. That's a problem if you're trying to look at trends. If you look at 35 days, you always have the same number of weekdays. Yes, you will have a variation for holidays because they won't record on a holiday. And that's one of the reasons real estate is negatively impacted by holidays. The closings that would impact, it would not impact offers. Offers are impacted because people are busy doing something else.
Right. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. You see the San Mateo County, the sale is slow, but still there's appreciation going on too.
Well, and when you talk about sales being slow,
Right, because
it's slower than Santa Clara County,
right,
absolutely.
distorted, yeah.
But it's still almost in record fast territory. As I say, okay, this graph chart sort of talks about what you're talking about. So if we go to San Mateo County, they're sitting there at 22, 23 days on sold inventory. I mean,
right. Yeah, it's
to
so
sell everything on the marketplace in 3 weeks is a very rapid marketplace. So it is slower than Santa Clara County, but the appreciation rate is also lower. So I would actually say there is a direct correlation between how fast the market is and how fast the homes are appreciating. So both are going up, but San Mateo County is going up a little less than Santa Clara County. San Mateo County is a little slower than Santa Clara County, but both would absolutely be labeled as fast marketplaces with strong appreciation. In real estate, if you're having a 10% appreciation in a year, that's fantastic. And based on the appreciation chart, San Mateo County was definitely at 10%. It was definitely over 10%.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I don't have any questions.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. Hope to see you next week and take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.